Beyond Stillness, Stories After Stroke is made possible by our guests and tax-deductible donations from friends and listeners like you. Join us in empowering stroke survivors with stories of wisdom, purpose, connection, and hope at www.beyondstillness.org.
This week on Beyond Stillness, Stories After Stroke, we spotlight guest John DeBell of Portland, Oregon. In June of 2019, John suffered a stroke during his coronary triple bypass surgery. Before his stroke, John didn't participate in many social activities, but has found his stroke survivor support groups to be informative, motivating, and enlightening. Today, John shares his story entitled Strength in Community. Thank you for joining us for part 2, John DeBell's interview. Hello and welcome to Beyond Stillness. Stroke offers a powerful, life-changing shift in perspective. Each colorful memory creates a parable for life's greater teachings, a compass for journeys ahead, and inspired wisdom for unique growth. This radio show, Beyond Stillness, offers an hour of pause for storytelling and reflection. Ultimately, Beyond Stillness is a welcoming environment that reveres the moment beyond stroke's paralysis. Still moments unite humanity and divinity. I'm your host, Molly Bucola. This week, we welcome guest John DeBell, who lives in Portland, Oregon. John had retired from his work as a carpenter at age 63 and a half. 2 years into retirement, June of 2019, things abruptly changed when he suffered a stroke during his coronary triple bypass surgery. As John puts it, his 20 years of not well-controlled hypertension finally caught up with him. John's story is entitled Strength in Community. Before we begin, let us take a moment of pause. Let us settle into our own bodies and our own minds and open our hearts. Open our consciousness and connections. In this moment of pause, remember just that, connection. We are connected with each and every individual by the air we breathe, our human experiences and emotions, our triumphs and our challenges. Today, let us call to mind people in our lives with whom we feel deeply connected. And with our open hearts, grant them thanks. And now, let us call to mind those who feel more distant, or those who may feel alone and isolated. With our open hearts, may we grant them strength, comfort, connection. And for the air we breathe and the blood that runs through our bodies, and the people who surround us, we give thanks. John, in your story, you woke from coronary triple bypass surgery. And when asked to move your leg and toes, you couldn't. Then you said, I was quick to realize that I must have had a stroke. At that point in your life, what did you know about strokes?
Because my wife had been a working physical therapist our whole life, I had a lot of stories that came home of talking about stroke patients that she was working with and the various things that come up from it in terms of the physical mobility issues, aphasia issues, and some of the unusual ways that these things present.
Yeah. So you had your own physical therapist at home, your wife.
This is true, but we agreed almost immediately while I was still in the hospital that she was not going to be my physical therapist because I didn't want somebody that close telling me what I should or shouldn't be doing. I would be much more comfortable hearing that from a third party. So she's my wife and she's there to encourage me, but she is not my PT.
Is that how you said it to her?
Yep.
And how did it land?
She said, yeah, I don't want to be your PT.
Well, that's really good to create boundaries and understand the specific roles that you are about to assume before you assume them. Having that conversation in the hospital before things come to a head and blow up, and then you decide.
Agreed.
And what are your effects that remain?
So my primary effects are right hip and leg and drop foot, and to this day, my leg and such works innumerably more than it did initially. And the effects to my right arm, interestingly enough, when I have to do a new movement or a difficult movement, my right arm will want to contract up in a manner like someone who's had a full hemiplegic stroke. I can put it back down and I can control it again, but it's kind of got a mind of its own. So yeah, basically right leg issues.
Interesting. In your story, you stress the importance of finding other stroke survivors. Can you share a couple specific stories of survivors that you've met and what you've learned from them?
I don't know if I have it as a specific person, but what I drew from even the first meeting that I went to that was an in-person meeting was to see a group of people who were as little as 2 weeks from having been hospitalized for a stroke to 20 years post-stroke, which one of the things that brought to mind is 20 years later and they're still coming. So clearly this has meaning. It isn't like they went to 3 meetings and got what they needed and left. And 2, the people who were years to decades out, if you didn't know what you were looking for, you might not even have any awareness that they had ever had a stroke. But, when you see somebody walk with a slight limp, or you see, their hand slightly contractured, or other little telltale things, it becomes clear that, okay, somewhere in their past, they had a stroke. And then in speaking and sharing during, the meeting time, seeing people talk about spending long periods of time to get something to recover function. So the 4 to 7 month mindset that I was thinking of after the first couple of meetings became clear that this was going to be a longer road.
And it's interesting, the invisible effects also. Some people show up and they look fine, but that's part of the difficulty because there's so much more going on inside.
Yeah, people in meetings will talk about others that meet them will make the comment of, you don't look like you had a stroke. So the public has some notion of what that they think that's supposed to look like. And a lot of people have sometimes minimal mobility issues and may have aphasia, may have cognitive issues. So things that, you don't look like you had a stroke. What is that supposed to look like? The other phrase that came out I don't know, first or second meeting was the whole premise that, especially the people who were from 5 and 10 years ago, that, it's 6 months, you've covered all you're going to get. I don't know that that's said as much now as it used to be, but rather than that, trying to turn it into the encouragement of progress may be slow, but it will go on and continue for the rest of your life. And in Colorado, the agreed upon phrase was, it becomes glacial. You can't really see the progress until you stop, turn around and go, oh, I couldn't do that last month, or I couldn't do that 6 months ago, or whatever. And so stopping and paying attention to what you now do better or couldn't do at all or whatever was a significant lesson learned from the group meetings.
Do you have moments that you stop and think how far you've come?
To this day, I still do that, and it's always encouraging. I don't know that I can say I do it regularly, but the fact that it's almost 5 years is just mind-boggling. I've had probably more return of some functions in the last year than I had in the first 4 years.
Whoa.
It kind of comes in leaps and bounds occasionally.
And what do you credit that to?
The hardest part is sticking to it. My leg, because of my stroke, caused me quite a lot of discomfort. And so a year and a half ago, I began to do very little, and it didn't hurt when I didn't do anything, but I wasn't doing anything. I then decided that, because of people all talking about going back to PT and OT and such during meetings, okay, I should go back to PT and see how I'm doing. So during the Portland meetings, people are asked what's something that's happened positive in the last month, and what's a difficulty in the last. Well, so the positive was that I went back to PT, and the difficulty was I discovered how incredibly weak a couple of movements had become because I wasn't using anything. So going to PT, I regained my strength. Since I was a carpenter, I worked physically my whole life. And so exercising on top of working was never my thing. So I am not as diligent or proactive about doing my exercises as I should be. Talking to someone just the other day in a meeting, they exercise 5 or 6 hours a day through a whole series of different kinds of things, and I was truly impressed. I would be hard pressed to get myself to do that, but that's part of not beating yourself up. I give myself permission to do as much as I can do and to encourage myself to try and do more, but yeah, getting down on yourself isn't going to help.
It's a balance between pushing yourself and encouraging yourself and letting yourself be and rest. And it's a constant flux because we're different every day.
This is true.
John, will you tell me a little bit about the physical therapy program and app? You said that was really helpful.
I have, prior to a few months ago, 3 different therapists when I lived in Colorado, sort of traditional physical therapy clinic programs. Medicare requires that the physical therapist be able to document progress and to provide new information to the patient for each visit. Otherwise, they need to cut you off. So you can't just show up and do the same exercises each time. So my experience prior to this recent one was you would go in and they would work with you and have you show what you could do, and then they would give you 3 new exercises. One practitioner wanted me to come in twice a week. Well, that was 6 new exercises a week. So at the end of 3 weeks, you had 18 exercises. I wasn't going to do 18 exercises. So I generally tended to try to stretch it out by going no more than once a week. And then I would get to a point where I had 23 things I'm supposed to do. Okay, I don't need to keep going. I just need to do these. So this time around, I looked around for a different kind of physical therapy clinic. And honestly, I met this physical therapy group through Stroke Warrior. They had spoken during a meeting. and they don't take insurance, period. So they call it a wellness program. You pay. It's very reasonable. I don't know how they do it. So it's like $55 a visit for an hour, which is just a bargain compared to what a PT clinic tends to charge.
Yeah.
And I go every other week. They worked with some company that helped develop an app that have little video clips of exercises. And so they have, I don't know, hundreds to pick from. And so they can give me my app. It is now broken up into 4 different days of 4 to 5 exercises of each. Some of them are timed, do this and rest for 30 seconds and do this. And some of them are just do it and then touch the thing when you finish that first series and do it 4 times kind of a thing. And what's quite impressive with it is I can stop and put in a note, this was really, really hard today, or this, I'm not doing this anymore, or whatever. And so when we meet the next time, my notes of what went on when I was doing the exercises are there for us to review. And they have commented that not a lot of patients use it. Well, they're missing out. It's just ideal, because it used to be an 8.5 by 11 with 3 little stick figure drawings that I had to kind of figure out and not lose. Don't know about everybody else. I've learned to hang on to my phone. Pieces of paper, not so well. So exercises used to just disappear into the house somewhere. I have a lot of control over how I do it, when I do it. In the back of my head, they're keeping track. The phone app lets them know when I've done my exercises, and it's ideal. And just the other night, somebody else spoke of working with another physical therapist in another part of the state who's also using the app, and they couldn't speak highly enough of it.
What's the app's name?
It's Theracentric, THERA, capital CENTRIC, Theracentric.
That is brilliant, because it's a motivator for home practice.
Yeah.
And then also it provides conversation for you and the physical therapist when you show up. John, in your story, you shared that your support group helped you develop the courage and knowledge to navigate the airport. Can you tell me about your thoughts, your fears, the obstacles and adaptations that you had on that first trip?
Through the Portland group, where there's often more just conversation, almost all of us buy tickets online for a plane trip now. There's somewhere on whichever airline you can request help, and then you can specify what that help might be depending upon your needs. I basically wanted help from checking in to get to the gate, because it's just so bloody far, and then getting from the gate to luggage at the other end. So you put in the request, you go to the check-in counter, you check in, and you tell them who you are, and they contact somebody, and somebody shows up with a wheelchair, and off you go. I travel with a walker, a 4-wheel walker, and so one trip I'm pushing the walker in front of myself sitting in the wheelchair. The second trip, some second person brought the walker along with me. I think I actually called the airline to understand luggage policy and such with traveling with a walker. So it was, take it to the gate, check it at the gate. They'll last thing in, first thing out. It'll be there when you get off the plane. And I asked about car rental. But basically, if you drive with an adaption, so I drive with a left-footed accelerator, you set up your car rental, call and say, here's my car rental confirmation number. I need a car with a left-footed accelerator and whatever else you might want. Some airports, supposedly you could just show up. I wouldn't do that. I'm a planner. So, like a week and a half ahead, I'm going to need a car. Yeah, okay. So, got to the car rental place and told them who I was, and they brought the car around, which was humorous because the guy bringing the car around had to drive with a left-footed accelerator, and he was hard coming. But you can get whatever it is that you happen to choose to need. It's all ADA related. It doesn't affect the cost of running the car.
Oh.
Yeah, it all worked out remarkably well. It was a little confusing at one airport.
Well, good for you for trying, because I think the first time is always a little chaotic and stressful. And sometimes we don't even want to try the first time because we know it's going to be confusing. But after we do it once, then like you said, we have a better idea of how things roll. And now my guess is things are easier for you when you go to the airport.
I know what to ask and who to ask.
Well, good for you for trying something new. And I'm glad that you were given specific tools from your support group on ways to try to...
Right, to negotiate the airport.
Negotiate the airport. That's it. At one point in our conversations, John, you stressed the detrimental mindset of comparison, specifically comparing your pre-stroke self to the post-stroke self.
Yes.
Can you talk more about that and how you learned that lesson yourself?
Since it was 7 months between the time I was hospitalized and I found my first support group, I was sort of thinking the wrong direction, because at that point I was busy grieving, I guess, my ability to get around, my ability to do things. And once I had realized that I wasn't going to be all better in 4 to 7 months, this was going to be a new permanent arrangement. And that was very hard to try and take on. The Portland community group, the guy didn't know where the quote was from, so I looked it up. Apparently it's from Theodore Roosevelt of "Comparison is the thief of joy." He made this statement as he run across this, and all 12 people all kind of went, whoa, that hits a nerve. And so, yeah, it's an ideal phrase to live by post-stroke. There's nothing to be gained by comparing pre-stroke, post-stroke. It kind of ruins the fact that you're having successes and you're having improvements. Slowing your life way down has often helped a lot of people change their interpersonal relationships. I mean, people have said they weren't glad they had a stroke, but they're very happy with what's come from it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you mention slowing down as a way to address comparison. When comparison comes in, being able to slow down and again stop and see how far we've come in our own journey, but also look at life a little differently. I met with a parenting group this week, a group of parents who have aphasia, and they meet monthly, and a few of them talked about that they wouldn't have the opportunity to be at home with their kids if they wouldn't have had their stroke. They also use the word sucks a lot. They said it really sucks at times, but when I'm able to stop and think that I was in a situation that I was rushing through life and focusing on other things besides my beautiful children right here at home.
Yeah.
Comparison is the thief of joy, Theodore Roosevelt. And there are ways to combat that. You ended your story with, in my own way, I've realized what is meaningful and significant and what is not. So, John, to you, what is meaningful and significant?
Trying to establish more interpersonal relationships, as I was a boss, a doer, and didn't really take much time for anything that was about me most of my life. So both interacting with more people, more than just a cursory passing working relationship way, and taking the time to as you're just were speaking about the young parents group, trying to redevelop a different relationship with my adult children now that I'm not the doer or the provider. It's a new circumstance, and I don't rely on nor need them to do anything for me. They're not my caregivers or anything. Yeah, trying to work on that relationship process.
That's beautiful. What if our whole world went about life like that? we appreciate the person for who they are.
Yeah, sure.
Appreciate the interpersonal, as you said, the interpersonal relationships, and slow down.
Yeah. Being forced to slow down helps that. And doing other therapy kinds of thing, doing family history, and generationally, things are significantly different between, say, my parents' generation and my kids' generation in terms of making time for themselves, not putting up with expectations of others. As you go back, it was definitely much more driven, everybody's lives, by other people's expectations rather than their own. So things are going the right direction. But yeah, it would be remarkable if the whole world could somehow alter its pace. A little side story, I'm seeing a chiropractor who's due in a few weeks. So I saw her for the last time the other day. And a tidbit I shared with my clients over the decades was your child's infancy feels like it's never going to end when they're an infant because you're so sleep deprived and the rest of it. But it goes by in a blink in retrospect later in your life. So try and be there for it. And 2, when your kid takes a nap, take a nap. Whatever else needs to be done isn't as important as you trying to get some rest. Being a train wreck doesn't work for anybody. And she was like, yeah, that does sound like a good idea.
Yeah, it's true. And that reminds me of the dilating nature of time that John Humphrey talked about in his story. Time, when you're going through stroke recovery, it's so elusive. And a lot of the spiritual world is, again, time is elusive. And you're talking about birth and when people are pregnant and it seems to last forever. And then all of a sudden it was so short and time went by so quickly. I like that you talk about interpersonal relationships and significant, meaningful moments. And that can all be applied to stroke recovery. It feels like it's taking too long. And then you look back and you're like, wow, it felt like forever to learn how to walk. And now I'm...
Okay, yeah, that is a very true statement. Let's say a year in, it was like, oh my God, this is just, progress is so slow. And the fact that in a couple of months it'll be 5 years is like, oh, okay, that first year was really, really, really hard. But, it's gone. So, yeah, paying attention to what you now do better or couldn't do at all or whatever was a significant lesson learned from the group meetings.
Well, John, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your story today. And thank you for meeting with me throughout the past month or so.
It's been a lot of fun.
It has been. You seem like a library full of knowledge. So thank you for sharing with me. Thank you for sharing with your groups. And thank you for sharing the importance of going to group.
Thank you. Yeah, well, very much. Well, thank you. Yeah, this is really awesome. I wish I had known that your podcast has been around and never even crossed my mind that there would be somebody doing a podcast on that subject.
Well, thanks for giving it a try. As we close today, for our moment of pause, we reflect on the people that just understand. Maybe others that we've met along our journey, other stroke survivors. John stressed the importance of gathering in support groups and the strength that comes through. So today, let's call to mind people on our journey that have listened, understood, and held space for us in our unique moments of recovery. We also call to mind people who have inspired us along the way. Those who may be a little bit further on in their journey, and those who may have recently had a stroke. Help us to remember that each and every person carries something unique that we can learn from, and that includes you. Remember that you are a wise person who has a lot to offer this world and other stroke survivors. And we give thanks. Thank you for devoting time and space to listen to Part 2, John DeBell's interview. For the full story, please listen to Part 1, John DeBell's story. Each colorful memory creates a parable for life's greater teachings, a compass for journeys ahead, and inspired wisdom for unique growth. In this episode of Beyond Stillness, Stories After Stroke, we heard from guest John DeBell of Portland, Oregon, who shared the importance of gathering with fellow stroke survivors and that their social, emotional, intellectual, and communal support helped fuel his recovery. Today, John DeBell shared his story entitled Strength in Community. Again, thanks for listening. And remember, as part of the stroke community, you are more than supportive. You are inspirational.
If you are part of the stroke community and have a story you'd like to share on the show, please contact us. Email molly@beyondstillness.org.
Beyond Stillness, Stories After Stroke is made possible by our guests and tax-deductible donations from friends and listeners like you. Join us in empowering stroke survivors with stories of wisdom, purpose, connection, and hope at www.beyondstillness.org. Another way to support is to like, share, or subscribe to our weekly show. Again, thank you for devoting time and space for this week's episode of Beyond Stillness, Stories After Stroke.